Earlier today, I was doing some research on my minestrone recipe and I started reading about beans. To use dried beans, canned beans, to soak with salt, to soak without salt, what kind of beans. And after an hour, I realized I really want bean stew with pork belly. So, here we are. After some shopping, we're gonna make pork belly bean stew, kind of like Cassoulet-Style. I don't want to pretend I know how to make cassoulet, but my variation at least. So, first things first, we need to soak the dried beans. Today we have some Borlotti beans. I also learned that it's actually much harder to find dried beans in London. So, about 400 grams, we cover it with a generous amount of water. And fresh from the research, you should salt the water. No, it will not firm up your beans. It will actually really change the texture of the skin for the better. So, trust me on this. This stays in room temperature overnight, and we now prep our extremely flavoursome cooking liquid for the beans tomorrow. So, for that, we have my go-to gelatin bomb, Poussins, 2 of them. I mean, it's not the most cost-effective way to get gelatin, but it's the tastiest way. To that, we'll simply add some cloves, or whatever spices or herbs you fancy. Bay leaves, garlic. I mean, yes, you want to be rustic, but still, this I would remove. Everything goes in. If you have smoked garlic, this will be a wonderful time to add them. Carrots, keep it chunky. We're going to fish out all the veg after cooking. I like to season the broth with all the aromatic vegetables so that by the time we cook the beans in the broth, we don't need to add them. To fish them out after the beans are cooked, it's much harder. So carrots in, 1 celery stick, 1 onion, once again we salt quite generously. Since we have the pork belly here, I've asked my butcher to actually remove the bone from the flesh. So of course, a no-brainer, this goes into the pot, which will also impart a lot of gelatin and some flavors. Now, lid on, you bring this to a boil, and then you let it simmer for about 3 hours. Now, since we have the luxury of time, due to the broth and the beans, we are going to salt this beautiful piece of pork belly very generously. 1, to give the salt time to penetrate and season the whole belly thoroughly. 2, and more importantly, for the salt to break down the protein fibers into smaller amino acid strands. This would make the pork belly more tender and juicier. So, if you really want to measure, I like to do about 0.6% to the weight of the belly. Perfect. Now, this goes into the fridge uncovered so that the skin will also have a bit of time to dry out, which makes browning easier tomorrow. Alright, day 2. The beans have been soaked, drained thoroughly because we added salt. So you have to really drain it. And they're ready to go. The pork belly, the skin has dried, the salt has worked its magic, protein strands broken down into small and short amino acid strands, ready to be cooked. We have a very wobbly gelatinous stock, which I've skimmed off the fat, and I've saved the pork ribs, which we used to cook the stock. We're gonna use this to make a pork crumble later, just to provide some contrasting textures. So, oven's been preheated to 150 Celsius. Let's cook some pork belly. So first, we want to rend out some fat, and then we want to brown the belly a bit. Protein reacting to high heat, bit of Maillard reaction to make the meat taste meatier. So, to render the fat, not too hot, we add a bit of vegetable oil, or any high smoke point oil, to help it get started. We'll drain off most of the fat later anyway. Beautiful pork belly goes in, skin side down of course. Move it around a tiny bit in the beginning to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. You let the heat do its magic. While the fat is rendering, we'll slice an onion. I know we've added aromatic vegetables to the chicken stock already, but the onions here, we're adding for the second time to caramelize it a bit in the pork fat, to give the dish a bit of extra sweetness, which will also help the browning in the oven later. You want to manage the heat to make sure the pork doesn't burn before the fat gets rendered. So don't be scared to adjust it. You want the onions to be on the finer side so that after the long cooking time, they'll almost disintegrate into the sauce. With pork belly, because the skin curls up, sometimes there's an air pocket in the middle. So you want to push it down to make sure the whole thing is rendering out evenly. Of course, there's always the lazy option. Ta-da! Now, while the fat is still rendering, we pick the meat off the beautiful pork ribs. I mean, after the long cooking, they just come right off. The only reason why it looks hard, it's because they've solidified in the fridge. I mean, to show you how much we've extracted from the bones. That much. This is a wonderful way to deal with meat that you've cooked for a long time in broth, instead of just throwing them in the bin. You get a garnish out of it at least. Now all we do is we chop this up as much as we can. Wow, you can still smell the cloves. It's crazy. Incredible. Now, check on the belly. Beautiful browning. Now for the other side, you can turn up the heat a bit, because we're just browning it. If it's sticking to the bottom, just give it a bit more time and the pork will release itself. And if it's really sticking, don't worry, we're going to mop up all the fond with the onions anyway. Other side looks good. So the belly comes out temporarily. We take this opportunity to skim off some of the excess fat. I mean, I love pork fat, but once this goes into the oven, the belly is going to render out a bit more fat, so this way we have a bit more control. You can always add them back in if you wish. Onions go in. Immediately cool down the pan a tiny bit as well. Now, we salt to season and to help the onions release their moisture. Season with black pepper to build some depth. And immediately the onions taking on the colors of the burnt bottom, the fond. That's a ton of flavor. The steam that you see, that's the water content of the onion evaporating. We're now concentrating its flavors, the sweetness. Well, the smell is incredible. Suddenly, one whole onion doesn't look like a lot, huh? That's because of the evaporation. Now, to speed up the process, we slowly introduce the broth to deglass the pan, to mop up the burn bits. And this, again, this is where the flavor is. Look at the color change. Once you start to get this French onion soup vibe, that's when we can add our beans. And we slowly incorporate the broth. You want just enough broth to cover the beans. And you bring this back to a boil. Lid on. And you let it simmer at medium heat for 20 minutes. While that's simmering, we'll make our pork crumble. Medium-high heat. Now, remember the pork fat we skimmed? Back in. I mean, pork crumble, pork fat. It's only logical. And they go in. And we literally cook the crap out of this until they're crispy. And there's no other way to put it. Season with salt. Also helps to draw out the moisture. No pepper yet. We'll season with black pepper later, so the black pepper doesn't burn. All right, after 20 minutes and the wisdom to switch to a non-stick, I don't know what I was thinking, we have our incredible pork crumble. Sound is amazing. Now, all we need to do, we have a tray that's lined with kitchen towel. We drain off the excess fat, and this will be ready when the dish is good to go. It doesn't matter if it's cold because the bean stew will be so warm that this will just provide the contrasting texture. Oh, so we set this aside. Now the beans have been cooking for 20 minutes. You can feel that they've now softened, but they're still a bit on the al dente side. They have a bite, which is exactly what you want. Now, what we do is that we add our beautiful pork belly back in the middle. The juices back in. You want to get to a point where the skin is not submerged, but the belly and the beans are mostly submerged. So, in this case, it's perfect. We're going to put this whole thing into the oven at 150 Celsius to cook for about 2 to 3 hours, during which the heat of the oven will further caramelize the pork and the beans, forming that beautiful dark crust on top. Every 20 minutes, we'll give it a mix and we'll keep adding this gelatinous broth to make sure the beans are always almost fully submerged to not burn them. So, into the oven it goes. Be careful, it's hot. Let's say 2.5 hours. I'll see you then. All right, it's been 2.5 hours, during which I topped up the beans with our beautiful chicken broth, mixed the burnt top a few times to really let the flavors emulsify. With the remainder of the chicken broth, I blanched some kale as garnish. Now, let's have a look, shall we? Well, the steam is reassuring that nothing has burnt. Look at this beauty. It's crazy. The beans have softened, they formed this beautiful, beautiful caramelized top precisely because of the gelatin. And because we did not submerge the skin. Yeah, I mean, what is there to say? It's just beautiful. Now, can we plate one? This is so tender. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is crazy. The meat is so tender. Wow. Beautiful. They go back to rest. Now, first, we have the beautiful kale. Kale and carbonara, they go so well with beans, with pork. And we've had enough time to soften, to absorb this wonderful chicken broth that we made. Now, the beans, oh my God. They're so creamy. Creamy, well browned, this wonderful jus. Sauce, whatever you want to call it. Gelatinous goodness, that's what we're going to call it. Star of the show. Right on top. Still crispy. And of course, we have this wonderful, wonderful crispy pork bits. And that's it. It all started with minestrone research. One day later, we have some amazing crispy skinned pork belly with a wonderful bean stew. I really, really hope you enjoy. Wow, I think one of my best, if not the best. It's so beautiful.